King David, one of the greatest, if not one of the best kings that the Israelites ever had. Many put David in place of Christian as one of the heroes, or someone we look up to be more like in our daily walk with Jesus. And I have to admit myself that I admire David, and when I look up to him, when it comes to leadership, his worship, his desire just to dive into God and to chase after his own heart. But he's also someone we need to learn from one of his greatest mistakes in the Bible. But that also doesn't take away anything that he has done. And it reminds us that he was human, just like you and me. We can learn from him. And in this new series that we're going through, we're going to go back and see David. And we learn from the man who we chase after God's own heart. To understand the story of David, we need to go back and see why he was chosen and to see the difference of leadership compared to the king of the land during the time. So let's go back many years ago, back to when they took over the promised land that God had promised them. And they began to worship him. And they did exactly what he asked them to do. But they began to drift away from the promise they made with God. And each time they would need to be saved over and over and over again. And instead of putting their trust and follow his leadership and the rules and what he told them, they chose many times to go back on their words and worship other gods and be ruled by other people. They plunged themselves into chaos and become a vision like the Canaanites after failing to listen to God. Fast forward a little bit later, we see where the story begins. Where the Israelites are wanting a king, just like any other nation around them. So they asked Samuel to go find a king. That he was the wisest man and a judge, kind of seeking him like a tribal chief. He was frustrated. He was mad. He's like, why would you want this? Why would you even consider this? They were calling to be different. We're called to be different and lead differently. And let God be the king. Not some human who could fall into temptation. But he did what they asked, and he went to God and asked him, what should he do? And in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7 and 9, he said, do everything they say to you, the Lord replied. For they are rejecting me, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Verse 9, do as they ask, but solemnly warn them about the way of a king will reign over them. So, he did what the Lord told him. He let Israel know what God had told them. But they refused and wanted a king, just like everybody else. So later, Samuel found Saul as God instructed and anointed him as king. Now Saul, let's just be honest. The Bible talks about he was a good-looking man. Had everything you think you look for a king or a leader. And more specifically, in a leader. He was strong, he was smart, tactical, and he was willing to let God work in him. So naturally, you would think he would be the best king. He would lead the nation in righteousness with God and right in front of them and have years of peace and worship. But that didn't last long. Saul became more focused about what he thought was right and good for them than what the Lord told him. What was more that he became more focused on religiously correction than what the Lord even told him. So, that's what he did. He became even so scared of the Philistine that when God told him what to do, who were going against him, he went the complete opposite and did not follow what the Lord told him to do. Saul had everything to be a great leader, on the outlook, even the mind to be one. But once he thought he could do better than God, that's when everything fell. And we all have fallen in that trap. Many of us have thought that we can do better in our job, in our family, our relationship, how we speak to others, our action, without God, without taking into consideration what did he say. We forget that God is much bigger and he knows better for us. And we fail to let him do the battle for us. And we lose the chance to gain so much more what he wants to give us. Instead, we look for the crumbles that's on the floor. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 13, 14, we see Samuel hear what happened after Saul won Pacific battle. And he said, "You acted foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord, the God I gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The hath sought out of a man after his own heart and appointed him leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." After disobeying God many more times, the anointing that was placed on him left him. 1 Samuel 16, verse 14. And the Lord sent tormented spirit that filled him with depression and fear. Meaning, he allowed evil spirit to attack him. But let's jump back to Samuel just for a bit. He was now looking for a new king to come take the place of Saul. And when the time came, God instructed Samuel to go meet Jesse and told him that there would be one of his boys who would become king. So as Samuel looked at all the boys that Jesse had brought out, he looked at all the boys except one boy. There was one boy called David. And when Samuel was looking at all the brothers, none of them was right to be king by the Lord's eyes. For people judge by his outward appearance, but the Lord look at the heart. That's what the Lord told him. And we can see, we go before Samuel chapter 16, 11 through 13. Then Samuel asked, all of the sons you have? They're still the youngest, Jesse replied. But he's out in the field watching the sheep and the goats. Send him at once, Samuel said. So Jesse sent for him. And he was tall and handsome, with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, "This is the one, anoint him." So David stood there. Among the brothers, Samuel took the flask of the olive oil that he had brought and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David on that day. And we can read David on how he went to go kill a lion and a bear to protect the sheep. How he killed a giant of Goliath. And how he simply played music for King Saul to help him calm down. That the Spirit tormented him. Why? Because he let God work in him. He gave him all the glory and let him take control of everything in his life for the people and his too. When we allow God to use us, when we let him take all the glory, when we let go of the pride of ourselves and we show the love of God to everyone, then we'll begin to hear people say, that person's going after God's heart. David was trying to be a mirror of God to his people and just say, look what God's heart looked like. What happened when we let God be our king than someone who wants nothing but worship for themselves. This is why he was chosen to be a leader. An example to us Christians of what it looked like when we let go and let God be God. David was in a good position now. He was anointed to be the next king. King Saul loved him. He killed a giant and was praised to be a hero. But this was just the beginning. And many more changes will come. Because when you're anointed, doesn't mean the enemy doesn't stop you.